welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's see what's in the papers this morning, and let's have a look at some lighter note.
We need that.
We do need this morning. Now, Jan Leeming, if you're of an age, you will remember Jan Leeming. She was one of the newsreaders on the BBC when it was, you know, a thing. Here she is, 81, and she's posing in a swimsuit, saying, why shouldn't older women wear swimsuits?
And she does look incredible, to be fair.
Great for 81. Good on her.
Looks wonderful. Let's stick with the Mirror, shall we? And the paper also features a lovely spread of Tina Turner in the arms of her dear friend, David Bowie.
The night Tina finally gave in to David Bowie. What'd she do?
Oh.
Promise a duet with him. I don't know.
Maybe.
And the Times have got an article about foreign teachers getting 10 grand, apparently, if they want to come and work in England. Apparently, there's gaps in mathematics and science.
And finally, The Guardian says the UK could go into another recession before the next general election.
Let's see what writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, make of all of these. Morning, you two. What's this in the inside of the FT weekend, Alan, about the United States and their borrowing limit?
Yes, so well, they're about to hit their limit in borrowing, and they are posed as being financial catastrophe is how the FT puts it. Maybe slightly melodramatic, but there's a massive issue, which is that the United States has got to the point now where its debt ceiling is being reached, and it's seeking to get it overturned, to go further, to get raised, so it can, guess what, allow more debt. This doesn't really resolve the issues that it's attempting to address, the things like Medicare, the provision of health and social security, as well as a range of other areas. And it seems like neither within the majority of the Republicans or the Democrats has anyone really got to grips with this in terms of addressing what this means. Obviously, for the markets, it's very important, and internationally. But the big problem behind all of this, of course, is that the liabilities are huge. We have this idea that the federal government, will be able to insure and back things around bonds and the markets. But actually, as we've seen with some of the banks that are failing and some runs, we are likely to face a similar thing that's happened in 2008 and earlier, because if you don't have the credit, if you don't actually have real money and people start making a claim on things, that creates a real serious issue.
I mean, this is why we've got to be very aware of this, because I said that the subprime mortgage market situation in 2008 was based in the States, and as soon as it started to run there, it affected all of us. And this is a problem. If we ever run in the States on this, we're going to feel it very quickly afterwards.
It's absolutely true, and that's why some of the discussions around the interest rates, people's mortgages in the UK, the gilt markets here, it all sounds like which it is, it's sort of financial techno speak, but the reality is that we've got a situation where we haven't got enough wealth that's been created in investment in infrastructure and development, and instead it's the over-financialisation of things and an ageing population and a lack of getting to grips with infrastructure. It needs to get handled.
Emma, let's take a look at the Telegraph, shall we? And this is their headline: 3 times more patients on mixed wards than before the pandemic.
Yeah, this is really interesting and a really important story, actually. We're not meant to have mixed wards, and there are meant to be fines for the... No, we're not meant to have mixed wards.
Rule against it, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's meant to be fines for the NHS every time they breach that of £250, unless there are certain circumstances. And since there are now 3 times more patients on mixed wards than since before the pandemic, and campaigners are saying that mixed wards are actually an affront to patient dignity. When you stop and think about it, in hospitals you have a lot of older people, obviously, because of people being poorly. You have people with medical conditions. It's actually not really appropriate to have mixed wards. So there used to be this penalty of £250, and now that fine has been dropped. And in the last 6 months, in the 6 months up to March, for the figures available, the rule was broken over 25,000 times. And I'm just thinking about visiting, elderly relatives in hospital, being in hospital myself, that kind of thing. It is quite a sensitive issue. If you're in a ward of, I don't know, older men, do you really want older ladies having to have their medical treatment? Obviously, you have a curtain around. I just think there's lots and lots of reasons here why actually sticking with the old-fashioned system of having women on women's wards and men on men's wards. You're looking very, very unconvinced of me, Stephen.
I am unconvinced.
Really?
I've got to be honest, because it's been a long time since I was ever admitted in hospital, nearly 30 years ago. But that was a mixed ward. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's not nice. I mean, the things go on, but the curtains are shut. You're afforded as much privacy if the bed next door to you is filled with an old fella or an old lady. I mean, what difference does it
No, I do. I think of visiting my elderly father, and I remember old men wandering up and down with the backs of their gowns hanging open. And even as a female visitor, you would feel a little bit embarrassed to be amongst a group of older men being, I mean, my last experience in hospital was having a baby. So I'm assuming that those wards would be kept all female. But no, I think it's actually worth maintaining. There's a reason why we have single-sex wards, and, there are medical reasons. I don't know what you think.
Well, I think the other thing we need to address is that if you look at Germany and other places in Europe where they've got different approaches towards healthcare, you've got many more individual rooms, like you have in the States, but with a different model, a mixed version of response. So, and that in the discussion of any pandemic and a range of other things also benefits. And why is it that we can't curate things in a way around what we need and design those things and come up with it? And that
I just think, shouldn't we be, maybe in an ideal world, shouldn't we just be focusing on having nurses rather than worried about who's in the wards?
I think if you ask patients, would you prefer to be admitted right now? Would you prefer to be admitted onto a single-sex ward or a mixed ward? I think most people would say that they would prefer to be with ladies only or men only.
Yeah, but wouldn't they say, if you also added into the mix, would you prefer
would
to
you
have
prefer lots of nurses and doctors and
they'd go for that, wouldn't they?
First world treatment? Yes, yeah. Of course they would.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the Mail, should we? It's the Equality Chief Witch Hunt. What's going on?
Yes, well, this is actually a really good story that's in terms of the result, which is that the Equality and Human Rights Commission has now had a probe put on ice. And this was the head of...
Sounds like a medical story.
Yeah, whereas the head, Kishwa Faulkner, Baroness, was being accused of all sorts of things because of her commitment to women's rights and equality, actually. And what has transpired is that over 50 peers have written in and in addition to that, there was a Channel 4 piece coverage that has been called a hit job by some, which is kind of focusing on very, very banal points in terms of what they're alleging she's done in terms of her conduct. But the primary push has been that she said the unsayable, that the equality right somehow should not be equality when it comes to women in the context of the trans activists, not trans people, but trans activists agenda, which seems to have penetrated many of the institutions and the public sector. And I think this is another example of some very brave women, frankly, who've got out and in front of this story and brought it to the public. And now many more people are aware of it. And I think so, therefore, this is really good that this has happened. And where we see in attempts to cancel people who don't fit into the certain criteria of a shrill particular activist group, that this reflects something that's an antidote to that.
Yes, I don't know. I need to look at what...
And Baroness Faulkner was only defending absolutely legal, she was talking about women having safe spaces and things like that, which are, legally protected in law. It seems that staff from within her organisation, she was devastated by this, terribly, terribly upset by these attacks. And I think it's absolutely right that at least it should be suspended while, the facts can be established rather than, as you say, Alan, someone just being cancelled for daring to speak out against this kind of shrill hysteria.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah. I just saw that with all of this, we talk the shrill hysteria, and maybe it's not handled in the right way, but you've got to expect people who are feeling excluded to have their say.
Well, having a say is fine. That's a good thing to do. Free speech is really important. When women have said that in refuges and in certain places that are meant to be safe, they want to have places for women to be there, and then you get attempts to cancel that person for doing that. That is not having your say. That is trying to dictate policy and shut down opposition. And that's where the issue is, because having your say is not being masked and punching people on a demonstration. No. And I think that's where the boundaries around free speech discussion. I think Britain's very tolerant. We want to discuss these things, and actually, we are very welcoming to all sorts sorts of people's decisions and choices. This is an activist.
But we need to make sure that we listen to the other side as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Which sometimes doesn't happen. Can we have a look at apologies if you're having your breakfast this morning in The Guardian, Emma?
Oh dear, can't we talk about
sewage.
99 flakes? This is such a disgusting story.
We can.
Okay. You want to go on to the raw sewage story?
Yes.
It's a really important one, especially with the holidays coming up and lovely weather. And I don't know why, and I include myself in this, why we haven't really got angry about this, about the billions of litres of water. So 11 billion litres of raw sewage were discharged into our rivers in 1 year. This is from a range of 30 water company. And the strange thing is that they have to reveal figures of such as how many of these wretched raw sewage discharges happened and how long these spillages lasted for, but not the volume of the water, of the raw sewage that's been discharged into our rivers. So, you know, water companies is another one of those areas where they've sort of got away with it and they've been paying themselves dividends and bonuses for a long, long time, and it's an absolute scandal. Last summer we saw many beaches, you know, on our green and pleasant lands or on our beaches being closed because of absolutely filthy water, excrement, human waste, all sorts in our rivers and seas and our waterways.
Oh, it's an absolute scandal.
It's a disgrace, but they've said they're going to tackle it now, but we're going to have to pay the bill.
I've read that many times over the past
This
few
is why
months.
the public needs to be at the heart of any decision making and what the services and provision in terms of our infrastructure. People sometimes get worried about what they say is a big plan, but I think we've got a problem that we don't have enough big plans, and that we've got a situation where what our needs and the efficiency of our organisations are not put at the forefront, and that's something that's critical.
We have an outdated water system, don't we? I mean, we're pretty much running on a Victorian system still.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere like
Our
London, you
population has
see...
grown tenfold, isn't it?
Yeah, they dig up roads for literally months at a time, and you say, well, what's going on? And they say, oh, we've got these old, you know, Victorian pipes and everything.
Well, they do.
Is it because we don't see it? Is it because most of us don't see the stuff that's floating in our seas?
Well, many of us have. I mean, many of us have experienced it. But they, you know, in Australia, for instance, they've got really innovative, huge pipes that they're putting in, and there are ways of investing in infrastructure to transform it. It's about our attitude and approach and priorities.
Well, this should be a priority, shouldn't it? I mean, clean water. You'd literally
Basic.
be
Really
up there. It's
basic.
just basic.
Yeah.
And for people who live in coastal communities, I mean, you can quite literally smell it.
Yes.
I've been down to Whitstable for a story before, and I spoke to someone who got very, very sick. So they're a sea swimmer. And once you're in it, it could look clean, but you don't know until you're literally swimming in it. And then you can get yourself very, very sick.
Oh, dear.
So
People having their breakfast and not going to be feeling very,
But, you know,
Do
for people who live in
apologise.
coastal communities, that's really, you know, it's something they see daily.
Extremely grim.
Yeah.
Extremely grim. ULEZ, now this is very much a London-centric story. Apologise if you're not in London on this one, the Telegraph, Alan. But the ultra-low emission zone, which I've never quite got my head around.
Yeah. So the ultra-low emission zone, we have one in central London. This is to expand it to the outer areas that the mayor currently, Sadiq Khan, has said needs to happen. It's to charge £12.50 for cars that are non-compliant. He says...
Which is what, basically just older cars?
Older cars from 2016. He says 1 in 10, but obviously there are many more, and actually 50% of vans outside of London are not compliant. And it's an interesting story because Ellie Reeves, who's the Labour MP and shadow minister, is concerned about pensioners and people in social care and the impacts across the board for that. And I do think that, whilst you say it's a London story, we've seen that there's a clean air zone in the Midlands that many people, over 70,000 people, have not been able to pay. And it's actually come out that the Labour Party has plans to implement these measures across the UK. If it was to get elected, it has tabled these issues. Local authorities have a number of road closure plans with low traffic neighbourhoods. And in fact, today at London Bridge, there's a rally that's challenging some of these things. But we've seen several councils across London and outside are doing a judicial review against the Mayor of London. And some are standing on their next mayoral election to challenge this outright. The question is, of course, why there's a disregard. You see across the board, Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative, Independents, many people are opposed to this blanket imposition, and yet the Mayor seems to keep repeating platitudes that are now patently not true, like 4,000 deaths. We've got Keir Starmer saying it leads to lung cancer. Somehow if you pay £12.50, you don't get lung cancer. It's contemptuous of the public. I think also what it would actually do is it raise a lot of money, and we have surveillance cameras everywhere, but is it really going to address the question of air quality, which has improved so much in the last 30 years in London and across the UK? So I think that's why people are rallying today at London Bridge, and that's why people are very, very opposed to it, even within the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And it's very, very unfair on older, poorer people who have these older, polluting, so-called cars. Yes, if you want to have everyone in electric cars, well, then you need to put the infrastructure in. At the moment, we don't have enough charging points for, you know, the amount of people that do have electric cars. So it's a really, and there seems to be no way to challenge all this. So, you know, I think Sadiq Khan has some questions to answer.
30 seconds, Emma, tell us about flakes.
Okay, ice cream, 99 crumbly flakes. The crumbliest, milkiest, what was it? The crumbliest, flakiest milk chocolate in the world. You remember the advert?
Yeah.
Anyway, these things are falling apart. Ice cream sellers are up in arms about this. They take them out of the boxes because they've moved production of them. Take them out of the boxes and they just fall apart. They're wasting huge amounts of money. Some of the ice cream sellers are saying, you know, I'm serving trays of ice cream with flake sprinkled on top because I physically can't put a flake. Imagine this, Stephen. Can't put a flake into a 99 ice cream. It's a scandal, and it's actually in all the papers today.
Yeah.
This 99 flake is a national emergency.
It is a
I think we need a
national
rally
emergency.
about that.
What are you doing, Cadbury's?
Yeah.
Sort it out.
We need to have words with you, because lots of people might be having an ice cream on a bank holiday weekend. Exactly.
It's not the same if you've got to
Very much.
roll it in.
Exactly.
If you're an ice cream seller and you've got boxes and boxes of these faulty
Send them to
flakes,
me.
send them in.